for this. I was here last year for Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2. And because, the character of Emma was under wraps, because it was a big spoiler at the beginning, and it was pushed aside. It was like, oh, we're so excited to come to Comic-Con. Don't come anywhere near the phone. Which is great. So yeah, it's great to be back.
I like how that played out in the pilot because it was, you didn't realize it even if you're watching it, and I recognized you, and I was like, okay. And then you get to that final scene, and you're like, okay. So, I like that a lot.
Yeah, it was really interesting because auditioning for the pilot, I didn't have, I knew that she was what side of the line she was on. And we had some dummy scenes to sort of give an indication of where things would go, but I had no idea how large the character was going to turn out to be, how she would figure into the greater story, or just how amazing the character was going to be. With so much depth and so much dimension, and I think Kevin's given me such an amazing gift with this character. I think one of the most complex and interesting characters on television right now, let alone for a young woman. I mean, there are not a lot of opportunities like this for a young woman in television, so it's great.
So speaking of complex, do you think that there is good in her? Do you think that we just haven't seen it yet?
Well, I think we've seen it. I just don't think I'm not sure everybody could recognize that as what it is. I mean, that's the thing I always sort of try to explain or defend about Emma is nothing she does comes from a place of maliciousness or evil. She's not Paul. Paul is a bloodthirsty killer who happened to find a club where he had an outlet for that. He's bashing women's head against a car and stabbing somebody gleefully in the trunk. That's not Emma. She'd just as happily vacuum the rugs for Joe if that's what he wanted her to do. She'll slit a throat too. She doesn't particularly care. But she's not out for blood. But everything she does comes from a place of love. And her love for Joe is real, and it's everything. And then she also had her genuine love for Jacob, which, my heart breaks for her. I consider her Joe Curl's greatest victim. I look at this young, abused girl who this man preyed upon, picked her out, who she fell in love with, who he then goes, okay, you love me? All right, no, you're going to love this guy that I'm giving you. You go, okay. So she loves him. Okay, well, now you have to leave him when he's getting closed in on by the FBI. Then he blames her. It's just this whole thing where she's been such a pawn, and I don't think she ever realized that until after she was reunited with Joe at the mansion for a while. Her expectations about what that would be like were very different from the reality.
I love how kind of heartbreaking the final scene with Jacob was, because you really do, even though it's pretty horrible, you end up feeling just so gutted for her that she has to go through it. Like, going through that scene, going through the scene that you've had to play, how is that as an actress to have to deal with that deep kind of, it's not evil, but the deep sadness, darkness?
And that's the thing, there's so much sadness to those scenes anytime she does something, because she's really only killed Jacob and her mother on the show, and both of those had huge meaning for her. Both of those had huge emotional impact on her, and neither was easy. And playing that scene with Nico in the car was very heavy and very hard, and that was actually the last scene that I shot on the season because it ended up being the last order. And after that, I was very happy to take off my costume and leave her in New York for a while and take a couple of months away. Because the truth is, what's hard about playing Emma and what's heartbreaking is that she does these horrible things, but doing them for love means she's breaking her own heart every time she does something awful. And it did. It broke her heart to kill Jacob. But she did it for him because she felt responsible for having forced him and manipulated him into this life. And then he had nowhere to go. He couldn't leave. If he left, either the FBI or the court was going to kill him. And she felt responsible. And the kindest thing she could do would be to let him go. She couldn't let somebody else do that.
Is it emotionally draining to play day in, day out?
Not usually. Because she is such a grounded character, and like energetically as an actor, she's so grounded that I'm not having to play somebody manic. It's not wild. So it is draining when I do scenes like that, absolutely, when it is very emotional. Surprisingly draining scenes were like Charlie's death in the study, watching Joe kill Charlie, because even though Emma has nothing to do in that scene, it's such an emotional experience to watch this man do that for the first time and never having seen that before. So those more emotionally heightened scenes are a lot more exhausting than playing, which is very cool, actually.